Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Three-time world champion Damon Carmabalo has given his thoughts on the current OpTic's Texas team and the key place they are lacking compared to their opposition right now, comparing their current roster to what he had back in the Black Ops 4 days when they came top 3 at the World Championship and could never seem to beat 100 Thieves. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. I think we're very much on the verge, or just about on 97,000 subscribers, that is. Tantalizingly close, I've got to say, to the big one. I'm sure if we go really hard over the next couple of months, we can make it to the big one by Champs or shortly after Champs. Do your best is all I'm going to say to that one, because it's getting kind of exciting at this point. Also wanted to mention on the fantasy side, I'm not going to put together my team quite yet, just because in case there are further roster changes, but just wanted to mention for you guys, fantasy is now open, $400 prize pool distributed for those of you who pick their best teams. Of course, the deadline is right before the next set of matches start on May the 5th. I will say though, we've revamped the pricing here so that there's many more viable teams. I know that in the previous couple of times it's been quite obvious that Drazah was a very good pick for $6. I think a lot of people went for either Standy or Temp, and a lot of people's teams are relatively similar. This time there's only a couple of $10 options. I think that Octane and maybe Pred might be $10, and then there's a few $9 picks, and outside of that there's a lot of 8s, a lot of 7s, a lot of 6s, and that opens the door very wide for many different teams to be formed this time. So if you guys felt like, oh, you know, it's pretty obvious which players you should go for, like Cellium is $8 this time, so it makes things very interesting, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of different teams formed, but I'll put my roster together for this one over the coming days. Quick note from Toronto as well, crazy to think this is the best competitive map we've had in the CDL era. Not quite, unfortunately, but in fairness, ever since the CDL's come around, Modern Warfare was an absolute write-off. Bocage, not the best in my opinion, but still looked back on probably kind of fondly actually by the competitive scene, but some of the Cold War maps probably still the best. I mean, Rage, right? I mean, okay, we can't look past Rage. That was brought back into Cold War, of course. Quick note as well, just wanted to share this from Karma before we talk about his thoughts on the current OpTic team in a few seconds here, discussing Gunless as a player, being one of the smartest players ever, and how good he was back in the day, especially Infinite Warfare when he first came in. Over the last few years, Gunless has been in a difficult spot and hasn't really made that much noise in challenges, to be honest, to such an extent that his return to the CDL seems at this point very unlikely.
I don't know what happened to Pierce, dude. I mean, he got sick and then just like, I mean, now he's just in challengers, but like, because I always thought that Pierce was definitely like one of the smartest players, and I don't really like to like just throw that out there like that. But that's what I thought. I thought very highly of him.
So it's really tough for Gunless, right? Ever since he had that illness and he stepped out of the team and Sparks came in, and obviously they won the Major with the Volk back at Major 2 last year. Ever since then, Gunless has not really, okay, came back into the team briefly, but he wasn't quite the same. And since he's been in challenges, it hasn't been looking so good. So it's kind of unfortunate because Gunless was super good for many years in a row, but yeah, it just hasn't worked out over the last couple of seasons. Let's talk the OpTic team then and Karma's perspective on it. Ghosty obviously has been a massively important factor for this team. The chemistry is built with the guys, the leadership he brings, the walking UAV, all that type of stuff, and the comms that he's able to bring up there, I think, with Octane and Los Angeles Thieves, that have been the gold standard really in terms of comms for the last couple of seasons. The issue is though for OpTic, yes, they've made it to the World Championship. That is now confirmed and guaranteed. The top 3 teams have clinched World Championship qualification. It's now impossible for these teams to somehow make a run all the way up to where Thieves, OpTic and FaZe are. Maybe it's still possible in a wild turn of events for Toronto not to make it with 2-4-5, but it's pretty much guaranteed for these guys. The only ones that are maybe in slight bit of question is Boston and Rokkr. If they both lose everything from now on, it's possible that some of these lower teams can make it through, but the reality is, let's say you're London at 60 points. If you go 5-0 in the qualifiers, you get to 110 points, and then if you win the Major, you get to 165, or 175 actually it would be. So technically, Ravers could get the 7th seed here if they win everything from now to the end of the year, but that's not going to happen. So this is what it looks like, and I think it's kind of clear right now who the top 3 teams are. The top 4, I think I would also put Toronto in that category. The other teams around there are just too vulnerable, and we'll see if there's any further moves made over the coming days as to whether these teams are going to try and pack a punch a little bit more from now to the end of the year. OpTic, though, second in seeding. They've been catching up to FaZe lately, there's no doubt about it. They have, I suppose, the best series win-loss probably in the league, actually, at 25-13. That's better than FaZe. They, I think, marginally don't have the best map win-loss. That actually seems to go to Los Angeles Thieves, which is pretty interesting, or maybe even Toronto Ultra. Probably because OpTic had a pretty rough start to the season, all things considered, but they're looking at the second seed, maybe the first seed by the time they get to the World Championship. We'll see. Could be third as well, depending how things go, but that will set them up for a game right now against Boston in the first round of the World Championship. If you're first seed, you'll play Rokkr first round, which is probably what you want to play right now, but depends. Vegas could still make it and be the 8th team. That's a possibility as well. But we did this fantastic documentary on Damon Barlow. I'm sure a lot of you guys have checked it out now. I think it has already a lot of views on it, so thanks for your support on that one. It's like a 34-minute, pretty epic video, to be honest, on the story of Karma from start to finish, and I know that Karma enjoyed watching it last night. It was kind of, he was enjoying reminiscing, I suppose, on his time elsewhere. But one of the interesting thoughts he gave during this was on the present OpTic team compared to their Black Ops 4 OpTic roster. The Black Ops 4 OpTic team was very interesting. They won right at the start of the season after they brought Karma back into the team. They dropped him right from the Dynasty during the middle of World War II. He then came back in right at the start of Black Ops 4, and they won straight away. They then fell off a little bit, that roster, and then as the year progressed, they got better and better, but they can never quite get over the line. Third at the World Championship. I think they might have been third at Anaheim, or I think they got third a couple of times, and they lost to Thieves a fair bit. And Karma reckons their downfall that year was their relatively poor performances in control, and it echoes a fair bit what we see today from the OpTic Texas team, where they're great in the other modes, phenomenal in hardpoints, very good in search and destroy when necessary, pretty good at clutching up in game 5s, but their control against the top teams has let them down a bit.
When I was on point in this game, I was good, but honestly, I had time. I was like pretty inconsistent, I'm not gonna lie.
OpTic Gaming were champions again. After going the entirety of 2018 without
I think our problem was like, I mean, low-key kind of how OpTic is right now. The control is just like stinky.
They regretted their decision to drop him initially.
And then Damon, thank you.
Valuable to the team. In a pool play game against Kingsman, he clutched 2 1v3 situations to secure them the win.
Dude, I wish I could have played with like these guys on like MW. I think I might have had more fun.
Oh, heat wave. He has heat wave. This is possible now.
Please, my heart. 1v3.
I can't handle this. Parasite doesn't spot him.
I don't know.
I actually miss playing with Matt, bro.
On the other oh my god! Oh, and he's keeping the bags!
Just pulled off the impossible.
Karma 1v2. Not again.
So it's an especially interesting comparison just because today, OpTic, twice that tournament, they couldn't quite get the better of Los Angeles Thieves. And back in the day, in that Black Ops 4 season, that was when 100 Thieves had first come in. Okay, it wasn't when they first came in. You guys might remember the Black Ops 300 Thieves team. We don't talk about that one. Nature probably doesn't want to talk about that one. But, when they came back in, I suppose, in Black Ops 4, they formed that great roster. Octane, Slasher, Kenny and co. And still, right, Octane and Kenny still on Thieves to the present day. Okay, the only player on the OpTic team that was playing on OpTic back then was Dashy, but still, there are some echoes through history here, right? These are OpTic's numbers over the major. This is the entire cycle. Very impressive. They came second at the end, 13 in 3 in hardpoints, 7 in 4 in search, 7 in 4 in control. Thing is though, 3 of those 4 control losses came to Thieves, one of which was online, and then 2 of which were in the grand finals at the major. So, I mean, yeah, for 75% of your losses in a specific game mode to come to one specific team, that, seems to get the better of OpTic right now. We know that Thieves were probably better prepared than OpTic Texas were going into the grand finals. Certainly seemed that way. The Fortress Search and Destroy was, I think, a good example of exactly that. And they just got a little bit outclassed when it came down to really getting over the line. But as I say, right, the control struggles that OpTic sometimes still have. I mean, they lost to Boston. The other one they lost was to Boston online, right? Was it to Kremp? He pretty much single-handedly won them that map. But, yeah, maybe Karma knows a thing or two about how to deal with the situation back then, and maybe can help a little bit with how the situation is transpiring now, because these were the numbers from OpTic Gaming versus 100 Thieves throughout that entire season. Okay, there's a couple of results here from 2016 when OpTic and Thieves had a bit of a back and forth in the NA Pro Division at 2016. This series especially, I don't know if you guys remember this one. Basically, aBeZy was on this 100 Thieves team, and it was an online game. They messed around in the Banner Protect, and 100 Thieves were using like shotguns and stuff in the final search and I think it was a fringe search and destroy. OpTic won 2021, there was a bit of trash talk that went down. Then Thieves left because they were terrible. And then they came back in 2019 and got the better of OpTic 5 out of the 6 times they played. The Pro League, they played them, they beat them there. They lost in Group A at CWL London, but then beat OpTic in the winners finals there. So I think OpTic came top 3 that event. And then Anaheim, they beat them again. At Pro League playoffs, they beat them again. And then the World Championship, they beat them again. That was to knock OpTic out top 3. And these series weren't even close. If you guys are OpTic fans back then, you'll know that 100 Thieves would consistently just demolish OpTic in these series. I mean, a 12-2 map count over the final 4 times they played, and it was the control especially where OpTic would always seem to fall flat on their face. The map totals, not pretty over history. This, of course, is not including OpTic Texas versus LA Thieves, but it's an interesting story, right? So you wonder whether Karma could give a few thoughts to the OpTic guys, whether maybe he needs to step in and give them some advice on this, but it's definitely, these words will be a little bit concerning to OpTic just because they experienced this before when they could only seem to get top 3 back in the end of the Black Ops 4 days. This time they're making a lot of finals, but it's their control last time out against Toronto, and now this time out against Thieves. I mean, look, in the grand finals, they lost on the same map mode combination both times with LSELO control. They lost that to Toronto to lose the tournament at Major 3. They lost that to Thieves to lose the tournament here at Major 4. So they obviously know what they need to work on, and having that, clear in their minds is, I'm sure, going to be beneficial. But I think Karma probably knows a thing or two about what exactly is going on here. Quick note as well on some of the other Lionman cards for the stage. Also, New York had a pretty good hardpoint record here, 10-5, 6-3 in control, impressive stuff. They came top 4 in the end. These was Toronto's record, 10-4 in hardpoint, but their search and destroy was woeful. So that's the key thing they've got to improve on. Their KDs here don't even look too bad. I think they are pretty bad on average, to be fair. But, you'd have thought they'd have won a few more maps than just 3. I think they lost a few round 11s in there as well, or at least it got close, and they lost when it mattered. So I think if Toronto had a better search and destroy, they would be looking good. If they can get back to 50, 55%, something like that, they should be fine going forwards. And I still do feel like they're a top 4 team, to be honest. And they just had a bad stage individually in search and destroy. Lost a lot of game 5s in the early part of the qualifiers, of course, that kind of set them back to starting in losers. Minnesota Rokkr, different story. 6-3 in control, respectable, but their hardpoint again not looking so good. Search and destroy in the negative as well. No one had a particularly good stage here as well. Cammy's turned up a bit since Fame's coming, but outside of that, it's not looking so good in the SMG department. And here's Florida. That is, I mean, these numbers are not pretty. Okay, Vickle came in, obviously halfway through, where Havoc stepped away from the team. Capstall's been okay as well, but look at these search numbers. It's not great, and all the numbers are in the red. So it's kind of a classic Florida thing. You look at these numbers, you'd think they deserve top 12, but they managed to get top 8 because they ruined another team's weekend, as usual, in the Las Vegas Legion. I thought this is an interesting topic of discussion as well, because ever since Shane has come into Los Angeles Thieves, that is honestly where the team started to turn around. He was coaching London briefly, or involved in the London coaching department. He joined Thieves. Jacob needed some help in that aspect. He came in last year in Vanguard, and immediately the team, especially in Search and Destroy, seemed to switch on a bit more. The team has given him a lot of credit for their turnaround. But of course, he's not the head coach. He's the assistant coach for Thieves. If you're Shane, what do you do? Because I've seen coaches in the past, Marky B and co, have moved to other franchises. Would Shane want to stay with Thieves? I think you can understand why that would be the case. Thieves, great organization, and you'd be obviously happy to stay there, you would imagine. But still, maybe Shane wants to go elsewhere and be a head coach at some point. And Nature says, look, if Shane wants to do that, would fully support him, but hopefully that's not going to happen, and that's out of sight, out of mind. But would you be too surprised if another team came through and gave Shane a pretty big offer to go and join their franchise, given how highly rated Shane has been by especially the Los Angeles Thieves guys? And just to close out with this, the team of the major they come up with, pretty interesting team they put together. I think this is probably understandable, given these two teams were in the finals, but I still feel like aBeZy, the way he carried his team through, I know that overall he didn't have the craziest numbers, but I would have put aBeZy over Shotzzy. I feel like Shotzzy was good, but I don't think he was final this tourney. Dashy was very good in the hardpoint, so I think deserves some credit. Octane and Kenny definitely deserve to be here. So I'd have probably put one FaZe player in here, to be honest. But intrigued to your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.